Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are calling in from. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm excited to be here to talk to you about resume tips today. I'm Jen Romano. I'm a UXR coach and instructor, and a lot of my content from these UX and coffee chats come from my chats with my clients and what my clients ask about, what my clients need. Sometimes I see chatter online about various things, and that also inspires me to bring something to you all. But if you ever have a topic, if you have something you're interested in, something you want to know about, let me know. I'm happy to cover all sorts of things related to UX and how we work together. I started these off as a kind of an accountability mechanism for myself to get online and share what I'm doing, what I'm thinking, what I'm reading, something new that's inspired me. And it's kind of shifted, as some of you know. If you've been following along, I often interview folks. I bring other experts into the room too. So you're not only hearing from me, but you're hearing from other people in the field. So also, if there are people you're interested in hearing from, let me know. My network is vast, and I love to bring that to you so you all get the benefit too. So anyway, I also wanted to let you know I'm really excited. I've been making progress on a number of things, and one of them is a YouTube channel. We now have a YouTube channel where all of these past UX and coffee chats are located. You could look up UXR Coach on YouTube, and you can find those. I also put up, you may have seen some recent clips. They're literally clips from coaching client calls. Obviously, my clients aren't in the video, it's just me, but I'm grabbing some clips from those calls, things that I think are relevant to many of you. The most recent little clips from a client call are pertaining to resumes and resume development and little tips and tricks and things you might need to know, things you might want to know when you're revising your resume or creating your resume, maybe for the first time. So check those out. And again, would love your feedback. I'm excited to have those up all in one place. So if you're ever looking for any of these past chats, that's an easy way to find them. I'm still working on it. And my website as well. I'll have a nice place on my website, a nice page. That's still in the works. So just bear with me. For any of you who are doing this kind of thing, creating your own content, you know that it's like a side job. So I'm doing the job and the side job. But anyway, check it out. Let me know what other kinds of content you're looking for. Also excited to share that I'll be teaching a course at Pratt in the fall. That'll be in person in New York City. Really excited about that. And I'll be teaching, some of you may have seen, I'll be teaching an online course for quantitative research methods at UC Berkeley Extension, in addition to the accessibility and user research course that I teach with them. So if you're interested in getting into quant, I've heard that from a lot of you, that might be a good course for you to pick up. Let me know if you have any questions. You can, again, check that out through my website, uxrcoach.com. You can reach out to me. You can look it up on Berkeley to see what that one's about. But I'm happy to share whatever information you might need for that. All right. So without further ado, I've got my coffee here. Today I'm having iced coffee. I don't often have iced coffee, especially at home, but today was one of those days. My ice has melted. That's good Hawaiian coffee. It's so delicious. Hawaiian macadamia nut coffee. Mm. Okay. So, resume tips. I thought this would be good to share because a lot of what I do in my coaching business is help people with their resumes, help people showcase their story, who they are, what their experience is, make sure all of that is coming through crystal clear. Because remember, when you're applying for a job, the resume is the first thing anybody sees, whether that is the recruiter, the hiring manager, other potential teammates. Excuse me. So you want to make sure you are spending time on your resume. Don't slop it together. Take your time. If you need to work with somebody like myself or another colleague or somebody that you trust who knows what they're talking about, this isn't the time to ask your mom to review your resume. This isn't the time just to bring your resume to a cheerleader to review all the wonderful things you've done. This is the time to bring it to someone who can be critical about what you have on your resume, the order you have it in, how you're showcasing yourself. Somebody you've worked with in the past who knows your capabilities, your quality, your work, that's a good idea to bring your resume to one of those people, because you may have forgotten something. And having a prior teammate, collaborator, maybe manager, if you have that kind of relationship where it's, it's not too much to ask you might not want your manager to review your resume, because maybe then they know you're looking for a job. But if you have that kind of relationship, maybe it's okay. Maybe a past manager or colleague, collaborator that you have a good relationship with. Again, you also can go to a mentor or coach who has not worked with you, who can poke holes. Oftentimes what I do, it's classic research methods. I pull the resume up and I think aloud while I'm looking at the resume, and I poke holes, I ask questions. Oftentimes I find that my questions are around, like, what did you do in this role? Tell me in your own words, forget about the resume. Tell me in your own words what you did. And then I listen to my clients, what they did and how they describe their work. And I ask additional questions, like, who asked you to do this work and why? Like, what was the business problem? And then I may ask, what was the end result? After you did all this research, what happened? Right? So I'm asking questions, I'm poking holes so we can get to the really good story on the resume. What you want to do in all of your entries on your resume is, and you may have seen my recent clip. Excuse me. I have a little tickle today. You may have seen my recent clip where I said what a lot of people do is they'll say the what, the what, the what. They will share all the things they've done, but they don't share the business problem, why they were actually doing the work, and they also don't share the impact. So what happened as a result of your work? And these things are really important, because if you just have a whole bunch of what's on your resume, it's good because it shows what you're capable of doing. It shows what you have done in the past. It shows your experience, but it does not show that you understand that the what needs to lead to something important. Remember, you're working for businesses, and the businesses have hired you to do something. For most of us, that is to improve a product. So you need to showcase in your resume that you have actually done that, right? You've actually been improving products or processes along the way. But B, that you understand that we're not just here to do amazing work, period. We're here to do amazing work to lead to something. And like I said, for most of us, that is improving products. So make sure, even if you call me up and you want me to review your resume, or, again, you have somebody else review your resume, before you even do that, take a moment to look at your resume. And for each of your entries, for each of your jobs, each of your roles, ask yourself, does this entry clearly show what I did, why I did it, what the impact was, what was the outcome of it? And the outcome is not a white paper. The outcome is not a slide deck that I presented to leadership. That is the deliverable, but that is still not the impact. There's still something else that happened as a result. For many of us, it's product improvements, right? Like we know as a result of our work, the product changed. That is a direct result of what we did. Sometimes the impact is other teams in the company used those findings. That is impactful, because think about research. Think about how expensive research can be. And I don't mean expensive, I'm not talking about the claim that research is expensive and that's why we don't do research. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about how expensive it is for you to have done the work. Literally your salary, your hours, your time that you put into conducting a research project. Now imagine if other teams in the company can use your findings. You're saving the company money. Other people can use your findings to improve their products or their processes. That is impact. And sometimes external people and companies use our findings. That might be clients of your company, right? Where you're not only are the people in your company outside of your immediate team using your findings, but you're sharing your findings with your clients who are improving their products as a result of your work. That's impactful. That's really impactful. Now, publishing, I mentioned a white paper. Publishing is usually icing on the cake. So I'm not saying don't include it on your resume, because that may be something that sets you apart from others. That may be a leadership thing on your resume. You are now an industry leader because you're publishing. So we want that on your resume. But that is not the top thing. That is not your main thing. That is not why someone is going to hire you. So Imagine your entry for one of your roles, and you have a bunch of things you did in that role. The first item should not be published. That should probably be the last item. I say probably because it depends on what else you did. You may have also been organizing um, internal lunch and learns or something. Maybe that's at the bottom or something, because also that's important, right? That's leadership, that's organization, that is information sharing at your company. But again, that's not what's going to get you hired. So if you think of it in terms of how to organize the bullets in one entry, right? The individual items in one role you've had. When you think about the order of those items, the most important thing, the reason why you're going to get hired, the impact you had at that company, those are the things that should be at the top of that list of items. Okay, so keep that in mind. Take a look at your resume. Already, you have a couple things that you can do. Am I ordering things properly? Is the most important thing at the top, within each entry. Um, and is my impact indicated for every single entry, right? Even presenting to senior leadership, like that might be enough in and of itself. But if there was something else that came out of that, if there was something else really important, something else really impactful, that's what you want to have listed there. Okay. Okay, I'm going to go a little bit out of order now. So let's take it to the top. So at the very top of your resume, it's really wise to have a kind of summary statement, or some people call it a summary of qualifications. Some people do this in paragraph form, but depending on how many things you have up there, I think a bulleted list is still valuable. And thinking about bullets, fonts, bolding certain items, think about readability. Think about, people are busy. People who are reviewing your resume, they are busy. Those hiring managers, those recruiters, they're busy people. You want to make sure when they are looking at your resume, they can easily scan it. You think they're going to read every single nitty gritty detail, every single word. And hopefully they will, but their initial interaction is not going to be reading every single word. Initially, people are scanning. They're looking to see, does this person even qualify for what I'm looking for? So keep that in mind throughout your resume, to use bullets, to use bold, to use different fonts. You might have black font and then gray font, right? Like, think about how to use those throughout your resume to increase readability. So back to that summary of qualifications. I prefer a bulleted list up there. And if it's a really long list, you may even have subsections, like industry leader might be one of your sections, and that's separate from what you have done. You're a UX expert, 20 years UX expert, and then you've got some bullets under there of what you've done in your 20 years. Industry leader, and then you have some bullets in there about what you've done. Educator, I'm kind of talking about some of my my bullets. Educator, right? And then I have some of my teaching things that I do. So you might take that summary of qualifications and break it down further. Similarly, in any of your roles and any of your entries, you could do the same. If you've worked at a company for 20 years, frankly, even if you've worked at a company for 3 years, sometimes you're doing a whole bunch of things. You're working across teams, you've changed teams, you have a leadership role across your entire division, and that's separate from the product team you're working on. So when you have a whole bunch of entries, even just, for one company, for one role, you may want to consider subcategories within that entry. So it's not just like a whole bunch of billets. There's no magic number of how many is too many. Again, you can work with a coach or a mentor who can help pare it down. But another recommendation, before you bring on a coach or mentor, put everything in your resume, because then that person can help you pare it down. You'll save time. You'll save money if you're paying somebody for that help. If you arrive with everything in your resume, and then, like I said, it's easier to pare it down. All right, so you've got your summary of qualifications at the top. Think about, in that section, your experience. Like, in a couple bullets, I should be able to read that summary and I know why I should hire you. Think about what sets you apart from other people. So some of you have some really unique experiences where you have started programs, you've started teams, things like that really do set you apart from others. You want to have those up there. even if they're not the thing that is going to get you hired, they might be that icing on the cake that I'm like, oh, this person's special. I need to explore. I need to see what's going on here. I need to see who this person is and what else they've done. That up there, that little icing on the cake in your summary might be the thing that gets me to read more in your resume. So think about why you're qualified. Make sure that is really front and center. And then think about things that set you apart from other people. You could put some fun things in there if you wanted, but probably those fun things, I'm thinking like extra outside of UX research or design or content, whatever your field is. I'm thinking like, let me think what I'm thinking about. If you were PTA president, or if you were a coach on a softball league, these are special because they show leadership. But I probably wouldn't put them in the summary of qualifications at the top. That might be noise. I mean, on the one hand, they're kind of fun, but probably those go at the end of your resume. Like if you want a little extra, like something extra, maybe that can go at the end. You may not put that on your resume at all, but some people want to put that because it's part of their identity and they feel really attached to those things. So I would say put those towards the end. That's what I'm thinking right now. Again, when I help you with your resume, I can help you make that decision if you want those kinds of things in there. But you may wait. You may not put those in your resume. And then during your interview, when you're talking about your experience, you can add things like that in and, give yourself some color in addition to like your professional experience. We could talk about portfolios another time too. And I can go into detail about how to organize those and the kinds of things to include. All right. Summary qualifications at the top. Next. Some people think education goes next because those of you who are coming in from an academic background, that's traditionally how it is. Your education is at the top, but in an applied setting, we're going to flip it. Your education will go all the way at the end of your resume because it's important, but it is not what's going to get you hired. There are a lot of people who come in from different backgrounds. So the fact that you have a degree in human computer interaction or psychology, the fact that you have a PhD or a master's, these are good to know, but they're not what's going to get you the job. There are people who are coming in who don't have those types of education, whether it be the topic or the actual degree, and they're still amazing researchers, right? They've learned different ways and they've had different experiences. That's what you want to highlight. And many of you already know this, your most recent experiences go first, and then they're going to go in chronological order. So usually it's your current role, if you have a current role, or your last role, if you currently don't have a role. And then again, go back to what I was saying earlier. You want to make sure you're indicating what you've done, why you've done it, and impact. Impact is really, really important. Okay. So you want to do that for each of your roles. And our education is going to go to the end. I mentioned publications. Those are icing on the cake. If you did publish, if something you did, some research project you did led to a publication or conference presentation, that's awesome. Depending on how many you have, you may have a separate section in your resume that is specifically publications or conference presentations versus sprinkling that in your actual job section, right? You may reserve those for a separate section where you have conference presentations or publications, things like that. If you only have one or two, maybe it doesn't need its own section. Maybe then you would put it in the section where your actual role was, where that publication occurred. Again, I can help you with these little nuances, but just, these are just some tips to get you started. Oftentimes people will have a list of skills or like tools they use, and that's really nice. Again, thinking about formatting, I mentioned bullets and bold and fonts. You could play with the formatting and see where that goes. I think on mine, it literally just says like methods or something like that. And then I just list them. I've seen them on many resumes where it's kind of off on the side, depending on how you have it formatted. Some people have like header and then all the stuff, header and then all the stuff. So you kind of have this white space on the side. You could use that white space wisely, right? You can have on your, maybe on your front page, or again, depending on your formatting, maybe it's your second page, but you could use that white space to indicate like skills or tools. If you're a mixed methods researcher, you might have quantitative, a section by itself, qualitative, a section by itself. Depending on what you have, you may not want those separated out. You may just want those all together, depending on how many there are. My kind of rule of thumb is if that list is really, really long, again, think about readability. You probably want to organize it in a different way and separate them out and figure out how to separate them out. Think about classic research methods and card sorting studies. It's like we have our participants sort things into groupings that make sense. You're kind of doing the same thing on your resume. So if you have a long list, you want to sort them in a way that makes sense. And you take your first stab. And if you can't quite figure it out, then bring in an expert to help you figure out how to sort those. I will say, what you don't want to include in that list of skills for most of us, you're not going to put things like Microsoft Word, Excel, Google Suites, email, right? Like in this day and age, for many of us, those are given. Now, if you are, let me think when that might be relevant. I guess depending on your past experience and depending on what you're going for. So most of my audience is UX professionals, and it is expected that we're using those types of tools. Now, if you are, like a more manual kind of labor, if you're in a more manual field, that might be relevant because people in your field may not be using those types of tools. So maybe it makes sense in those fields. In the UX world, it's pretty much a given that we know how to use those things. So I would not include those on the resume at all, because if anything, it's going to come across as a bit junior level, right? And that's not what you want to do. So those things that are obvious, you don't need to put on there. The same way we wouldn't put like typing as a skill. It's like it's a given. We know how to type. Even if you're a typer like this, doesn't matter. We're not putting our typing speed. Once upon a time back when we even used to take typing in school and stuff, and it was like a newish thing, like maybe that would have been relevant to put on a resume because not everybody had those skills. But in this day and age, it's expected that we know how to do those things. So don't muddy it up with those things that are expected. And you, again, really want to put things on there that showcase you and why I should hire you. I'm not hiring you because you know how to use Microsoft Word or Google Suite or, these kinds of things, or Zoom or, these platforms that not only most people use, but like they're super easy to learn. So, if you've never used Zoom before, I could show you how to use it in a matter of minutes. So we don't want to waste room basically on our resume for that. Another tip, it's okay if your resume is more than one page. I still have so many clients who try to squeeze so much into one page. And first of all, it can be really messy. If you're squeezing a lot onto one page and you have tiny, tiny font, that's a bad experience for whoever's reading your resume. So don't do that. But also, if you've had a lot of experiences, it's impossible to put all of your important things on one page. Now, this is different if you are, let's say, coming out of high school and you're going for your first job, then probably everything can fit on one page. For many people coming right out of college, undergrad, where you don't have a lot of experiences, everything can probably fit on one page. If your work experiences include classes you've taken and classroom projects, probably you can fit everything on one page because you don't want to highlight that the only experience you've had is classroom experience. So, you don't want page after page of all the projects you've ever done in class. But once you move beyond that and you've had some real work experiences, working for companies, working for clients, for people, then it's totally fine to go beyond one page. If you've got publications and conference presentations and you're teaching and you're mentoring, like these are things you want to include, and you certainly don't want to take away from your work experience, right? So you don't want to squeeze all that into one page and have it be like super tiny font and really messy. So totally fine to go beyond one page. Now, again, there's no magical number. And if you are coming from an academic setting, you know that the CVs, which are, it's the curriculum vitae, which is it's jargon, it's academic speak for resume. Those are really long because academics put everything in there. They're putting what they're teaching, obviously where, but that's like their job. But all the publications, all their research things they're working on, students they've mentored who have gone off to get when they're on dissertation committees and things like that. That's all on their CVs. So resumes, literally, I used to have a CV that was like 20 something pages long. I don't anymore for my applied resume, right? Like that doesn't make sense because again, that's not what's going to get me hired in an applied setting. So you don't want to muddy it up. You don't want to send a 20-page resume to a company who they don't need all that information. But more than one page is fine. I've seen, I don't know, 6 pages, maybe more. And that's totally appropriate because, again, your most important things are up front. So if your hiring manager or the recruiter, if they're not reading past page 1 and 2, totally fine. All of your important things are on your first couple pages, on your first page, really, your first couple pages, though. And then if they're interested in you and they want to see all the things you've done, they are going to read further. So it's totally appropriate. I promise you. What else? What else? These are some of the big resume tips, I think. The real thing to think about, is think about your user. So as UX professionals, we think about our users when we are creating products, when we're researching, we're designing, revising our products. We, as UX professionals, are trained to think about our users. And does this make sense to the user? Does the user understand this language? Does the user understand this navigation? How does the user feel about the color, about the font and the graphics, right? We're always thinking about our user. We tell our clients, users don't understand X, Y, and Z. And to make this relevant to the user, we recommend X, Y, and Z. So we're doing this with our clients all the time. But for some reason, when we're working on our own products, such as our resume, we forget about our user. And our user is the hiring manager or the recruiter or your future colleagues, right? So a good rule of thumb is to think about your user and what information the user needs and how can I make sure everything is crystal clear. Make sure I'm showcasing myself, my skills, my capabilities, what I'm bringing to the team, making sure that stands out and is crystal clear to the user, right? So I'm not going to use jargon. Let's say I worked on something and some internal product that's super jargony. I'm not going to use that jargon on my resume because and maybe a little because somebody might understand it, but really you want to make sure your user understands, that your user can easily follow the navigation. So again, using bullets and headers and things like that to help guide the eye, the same way we would recommend in our digital product and our websites and our apps and our forms, our surveys, all these things. When we're thinking about the user, think about those principles when it comes to your resume. How can you make your resume spectacular for your end user? I mean, really, your job depends on it more so than any of the projects you've done before, because now it's your resume. And to get the job, you really want to make sure you're showcasing yourself exceptionally well. On that note, one thing I want to mention is you may change things a little bit depending on the role you're going for. So your experience stays the same. Your experience is your experience, but maybe your summary of qualifications changes a little bit if you're going for a quantitative role versus mixed methods. If you're going for a role focused on AI and you've had a little bit of AI experience, if you're going for a role focused on privacy and you've had some privacy experience, if you're going for a management role and you've had some management experience. So whatever you're going for, you may want to bring some of those right up to the top. Make it crystal clear that I have the experience for this job. And if it's a quant in one company and it's more focused on privacy in the other, you're going to change those things at the top so it's relevant to the company. So keep that in mind. The other thing to keep in mind is You don't have to put your exact title you had on your resume. What I mean by that is sometimes our title is vague. I had a title research psychologist when I wasn't even a psychologist. I was still in grad school. And some of my other colleagues who were not in school, we were all research psychologists. This is the formal title in the government system, right? This is when I was at the US Census Bureau. Research psychologist doesn't make sense if I'm applying to a job at Google and it's a UX research role when what I was doing as a research psychologist was UX research, right? So if I'm applying for government, maybe I want to keep research psychologist in there because that's what they call it. Maybe in parens, I put UX research or UX research lead or something like that. But if it's an applied setting, research psychologist is so vague. UX analyst maybe is also vague. So just keep that in mind. And again, I can help you work on that. Now, you don't want to lie. I'm definitely not telling you to lie. I'm not telling you to make it seem bigger than it is. Absolutely not. It's just sometimes our titles don't make sense. Another time I had a title of like project manager, I think it was, but really I was the team lead, right? I was my real title was director, but internally it was like I forget what it was, project manager, program manager, but externally it means something completely different, right? So you want to make sure on your resume, the thing you did is what you're calling it. Don't worry if your internal language was something else. We are at time. As always, these just fly by so quickly. Thank you so much for joining me today. Reach out anytime if you have questions about your resume, if you have questions about UX, how to get into it, how to prepare for those interviews, how to up level. Maybe you've got that role and you really want to grow in stakeholder engagement and being more impactful in the workplace. Let me know. I'm here for you. You can reach out anytime. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me online at uxrcoach.com. And I look forward to talking to you all soon. Thank you so much for joining me and have a wonderful rest of your day or evening, wherever you are. See ya.